Despite the obvious differences between Congress and Parliament, they have the same objective. That is for legislators to reach a consensus on national goals and to hold the executive accountable for its policies.
Oversight is intensive, very time-consuming, takes a lot. But what are you doing? You're building a national basis for your program. You're building that national support.
I think oversight has a lot of advantages to it. Is there waste, fraud, abuse? Is there cost effectiveness? Are you achieving the purposes that you sought? All of these are legitimate purposes of oversight. There are other aspects to oversight in foreign policy that are important. Every president I've known, and I've worked with 8 of them, have been reluctant to articulate policy. But I think it's part of the congressional obligation to make them do it.
Our primary oversight was through 2 armed services committees, 2 defense appropriations subcommittees, 2 intelligence committees, and then there were a host of other committees that would claim some jurisdiction over you over little things.
Unlike their Canadian counterparts, U.S. committees have access to a wide assortment of resources and researchers.
The staff that we had on the Senate Armed Services Committee was about 20 professionals, 25 professionals. Now we had behind us resources that you could draw on from the General Accounting Office, and there were, 700-800 people, I suppose, over there. Over at the Congressional Budget Office, there were probably 30 to 40 people there that you could draw on.
It's not unusual for committees to have up to 100 staff, some of the larger committees. My Rules Committee that I was staff director of only had about 36 staff, but we had a smaller number of members. We had 13 members, and we just had 2 subcommittees instead of 5 or 6. But so some of these subcommittees, though, have a large number of staff with specific assignments on issue areas as well as investigations of the executive, so they have staff to do oversight.
Well, the Committee of Primary Jurisdiction, the House Armed Services Committee, is a very large committee with roughly 50 staffers, and they are specialists in specific areas in defense. I talk with them on frequent occasions. There's also the Congressional Research Service, which is the research arm created by Congress.
By contrast, SCONVA has very few resources, only 3 full-time staff members, and MPs usually have only 1 executive assistant who also has constituency duties. If MPs want information, they have to seek it elsewhere.
When I was critic, before the Diefenbaker administration was defeated and when the Pearson government was formed, I had to get nearly all of my information from the minutes of the Senate and House committees in Washington. And I had a lot of people down there, including Gerald Ford, who used to send me these things regularly. And I would read them, and it was astonishing, the information that they had, including about Canada. Far more information than our own people were getting about Canada. And so I would get up in the House of Commons and ask questions based on the information that Congress had obtained from their military people. And I just said, hey, this is ridiculous, because how can you have an informed debate without people who are informed?
Very often the assistants of the members of Parliament are young people who are looking for training grounds for their own political careers. There's very little expertise available to the average member of Parliament to find out what is the real issues here. They read what they read in the newspapers, they see what they see on CNN, and that's basically what they know of the situation.
Myself, as a researcher, I'm covering 4 different policy areas: defense, foreign affairs, trade, and veterans affairs. And it's very difficult to really effectively stay on top of all the issues, let's say in national defense, when your attention is that dispersed to different portfolio areas.
Our committee system of the House leaves members pretty well on their own with a very minor staff to address these complex matters. The second problem rests with the bureaucracy, which is not always as cooperative with ordinary members of Parliament as they should be. When members ask for detailed examinations of what is going on, for detailed visits to the headquarters, for details of operations and plans, these are often very slow to come forward, if they come forward at all.
I think the parliamentarians don't know the right questions to ask half the time. I think they don't have the correct information on the basis on which they can base questions, and it's a very big difference between the system of government we have here and the one we're always comparing ourselves to, south of the border, where Congress votes the money for the armed forces. That is not the case here. And because it is not the case, for example, SCONVA cannot summon anybody who doesn't want to go, and when SCONVA does summon them, they're not appearing before SCONVA in the same way that they would be appearing before, let's say, the Armed Services Committee of the American Senate. There's a very, very big difference.
And the Standing Committee on Defense it's limited in what it can do because it's dominated by the government of the day, and the government of the day doesn't want a lot of the heavy-duty issues to be aired publicly. It produces its reports, and a lot of the times the reports, they're well done, but they don't go anywhere.
Well, I was surprised that I was even asked to go before the parliamentary committee, and it certainly wasn't at the request of any of the government members that I was there. And I was given 10 minutes, and I made a statement. Others who were at the same meeting had given their statements, and they all had run over the 10 minutes. When I got to the end of the 10 minutes, I was told by the chairman that was it. It was obviously a committee that was nervous about my appearance because I might say something that would embarrass Lloyd Axworthy or Eggleton and the government. And so I didn't feel particularly comfortable there.
Our own parliamentary committee wanted to talk to me about Yugoslavia and peacekeeping in general and the military. And what I found bizarre was when I appeared in front of the U.S. Senate, give my own personal opinion, when I appeared in front of Parliament, here's the party line. I was told, here's this is, don't stray from this, and do not criticize government policy. Well, if I'm not going to criticize government policy, then why the hell do you have to ask me? Because if I'm just going to spoke government policy, then it's no use interviewing me.
There is a notion, again, that in a parliamentary system where you have a minister that's responsible for defense, then those who are involved, both in the department and in the armed forces, are severely restricted in what they can say about the state of the armed forces. And certainly, if in saying something about the state of the armed forces means that the Chief of Defense Staff is going to hold a press conference and blast the government and his or her minister, I would say, yes, you've gone beyond the pale. But when you're in front of a parliamentary committee, whether it's the House of Commons or the Senate, and you're asked direct questions, then there is an obligation not to fudge.
I don't think the CDS lies to Parliament. I just think that the CDS answers only that which the CDS chooses to answer, which reflects the best light on the armed forces, because if the CDS doesn't do that, the minister may say, hey, Joe, what the hell are you doing out there putting this government in a bad light? Who do you work for anyway? That's just the way it is.
If members of Parliament are told not lies, but only half the truth, they are not going to be in a position to do their duty as elected members from this country.